The morning air felt cool against Mr. Hamid's cheeks as he guided his small motorcycle onto the open road. He liked mornings because they were gentle with him. The light was soft, the traffic thin, and the world had not started talking loudly yet. His hands were careful on the handlebars. They had grown thin with age, but they still knew how to move with patience. He eased the throttle and listened to the hum of the engine, a sound that had kept him company for many years. He wore the same jacket he always wore on this day. It was a little faded and a little loose around the shoulders, but it fit him in a way that felt right. On the left side of the chest, a tiny ribbon was pinned above the pocket. He did not wear it to be noticed. He wore it to remember. Each time the jacket brushed the wind, the ribbon moved a little, and he felt a quiet strength rise in him. He patted the pocket, not to check anything, but because the habit made him calm. On his back rested a small, neat backpack. Inside was a wooden box that he had sanded and oiled himself, because care mattered. He had wrapped the box in a scarf so it would not move around. The box held letters, an old photograph, and a simple badge. He had taken the photograph out the night before and looked at each face for a long time. The edges were a little worn, but the smiles were still bright. He had said each name softly, as if calling them into the room for tea. He was going to the memorial service like he did every year. It was not far, but it always felt like a journey, because memory adds miles to any road. He remembered the first time he went, years ago, when he had more black hair and stronger arms. A promise had brought him there, and the same promise brought him now: I will show up. I will remember. I will be there. He had said it to friends when they were young and full of plans. Promises, he had learned, were not heavy when you carried them with love. The sky was soft blue with thin clouds that looked like chalk lines. On both sides of the road, fields stretched out like green cloth. He passed a small canal where the water made a friendly sound. Birds hopped along the edge and flew up as his motorcycle hummed by. He liked seeing simple things begin their day: a farmer tightening a rope, a woman sweeping a doorstep, a child trying to balance on the curb with arms spread wide. His tail light had been flickering for days. He had checked the wires himself, then told himself it would probably hold. This morning, he had tightened the screw once more, smiled at the stubborn bulb, and said, "Do your best." He did not ignore the risk, he just believed in making a good effort and then trusting the rest. Still, he told himself to ride carefully and to keep space from any car that came too close. He hummed a tune that his wife used to sing while washing cups. It was a slow, kind melody, the sort you could hum without thinking about the words. He could almost see her hands moving in warm water, her soft laugh when he made a small joke. She had more patience than anyone he knew. She used to remind him, "Show up, even when it's hard." When she said it, it sounded less like advice and more like a shared rule for a good life. A breeze carried the smell of wet soil and the sharp, cheerful scent of fresh coriander from a roadside stall. He slowed near a tea stand and raised two fingers in greeting to the owner, an old friend who always wore a knitted cap no matter the weather. The friend lifted a kettle in return and shouted something friendly that the wind stole away. Hamid lifted his chin and smiled. He did not stop, not today. He wanted to be on time. The road began to rise and fall in gentle slopes. His motorcycle made small changes in sound as it climbed and coasted. He felt each change in his back and shoulders. Age had added delicate aches to his days, but he did not complain to himself. Instead, he adjusted his seat by a finger's width and relaxed his elbows. A small discomfort could be mended by small wisdoms: sit straighter, breathe deeper, do not rush. A truck passed him slowly, the driver giving a polite honk to say hello rather than to push him aside. He nodded in thanks and kept a steady line. In his mirror, the red tail light gave a weak blink and then a stronger one. "Come on," he whispered, as if the machine could hear. Machines could not hear, he knew, but sometimes a kind word was more for the person saying it than for the thing receiving it. He thought about the memorial itself. It was held in a plain hall with a clean floor and a simple wreath of flowers up front. There were no grand speeches, only names read from a page, and a few short stories told in soft voices. Every year, the stories were a little different. Every year, the flowers smelled the same. He liked that balance, something new, something steady. He would place the wooden box near the front, like he always did, take a breath, and allow the silence to do its work. When the sun rose higher, the light turned stronger, and small shadows formed on the road where trees reached across from either side. A bicycle came up beside him for a moment, its rider pumping hard and smiling. Hamid smiled back. The bicycle slowed and fell behind, and he remembered the years when he could ride a bicycle up a long hill without a second thought. He did not wish to be young again, he just liked the memory as one likes the taste of a fruit from last season. A car behind him flashed headlights twice. He moved to the left a little to let it pass. As it did, the driver looked over quickly and then looked again. The driver's eyes lingered on the flickering tail light. The car slowed beside him for a moment, and the driver made a small gesture toward the back of the motorcycle, then a question with his eyebrows. Hamid nodded and held up an OK sign with his fingers. The driver gave a friendly salute and drove on. This simple exchange warmed him. People noticed. People cared. The road did not belong to one person alone. The seat under him made a small creak that only he could hear. He shifted his weight. He thought about the letters inside the wooden box. Some were written by him, some by others. The paper had yellowed a little, but the ink lines were clear. The words inside were not grand. They spoke of ordinary days, kind acts, shared jokes, and helpful hands. He liked that the letters did not try to be large. They were honest, and honesty is already full-sized. Up ahead, a thin dog trotted along the shoulder of the road with the calm of an experienced traveler. When it heard his engine, it stepped down the verge and waited. He slowed a little to pass and gave it a nod as if it were a person. The dog blinked, then continued on its quiet business. He had seen people rush past animals and people with the same blind speed. He preferred to move as if everything mattered, because in some way, it did. He remembered how his wife would pack him a snack for this ride. A small piece of cake or a sweet date wrapped in paper. After she passed, he kept the habit alive by packing something simple himself. Today, wrapped in the side pocket of his backpack, was a small piece of honey cake from the bakery near his lane. He planned to eat it by a tree near the hall after the service, because joy should always sit next to memory, not far from it. Another kilometer slipped by. The sun brightened the metal on his mirrors, and he had to angle them slightly so they did not reflect into his eyes. The droplets from last night's dew had dried on the grass. The fields were now awake. A boy waved a small flag near a tractor for fun, and a woman in a bright scarf walked with a basket that swung in rhythm with her steps. The world looked well made, he thought, not because it was perfect but because so many small things kept trying. The flicker in the tail light returned, this time with a stubborn pause. Hamid pressed the brake gently and looked in the mirror. The light glowed, then faded, then glowed again. He sighed, not in anger, just in understanding. We will manage, he told the bulb and himself. He added a bit more space from the car ahead and kept his speed modest. Safety, like respect, often lives in small decisions repeated over and over. A gentle hill brought him to a view of the town in the far distance. The rooftops looked like a row of sleeping cats in the sun. He felt a soft pride in his chest. He had made this ride many times, and each time he felt like he was stitching two pieces of cloth together, the past and the present. Stitch by stitch, year by year, a simple fabric of faithfulness had formed. He did not think of himself as special. He thought of himself as steady, and that felt better. He heard a car behind him again, then another. Morning had grown into the day. He moved neatly to the side when the road allowed. He checked his mirrors, checked his speed, checked his breathing. He felt the wooden box shift slightly inside the backpack and shifted his shoulders to settle it. He imagined placing it down later, saw his hand on the lid, saw the polished wood catch the light. A small sign by the road told him he was getting closer. He read it and nodded. He thought of the names he would hear, and the short silence after each name. He planned to stand straight, listen with all of himself, and let each name fall like a pebble into a clear pool. He had learned that silence is not empty, it is full of things we respect. The traffic behind him changed tone. He heard a car take a tighter breath, then stretch out. A vehicle coming the other way blinked its headlights in a simple warning, the kind drivers give to each other when there is a small problem ahead. He straightened and glanced at his mirror again. The tail light gave a faint answer, then rested. He kept calm. Fear did not help a wire to connect. Calm hands and patient choices sometimes did. The road passed under him like a long ribbon, and the world widened, then narrowed, then widened again. He felt grateful that his body still allowed him to ride, that his eyes still read the signs, that his ears still heard the good parts of the day. He thought of his wife and the way she would have teased him for talking to a tail light. He smiled into the wind, and the wind accepted the smile. A white sedan appeared behind him and kept a slow, careful pace. It did not try to squeeze past. It kept a respectful distance, and he felt safe in front of it. After a minute, it moved to the other lane and rolled up beside him, matching his speed. The passenger looked at him with a friendly concern and made the same small gesture toward the back. Hamid nodded again and gave a grateful thumbs up. The passenger smiled, then spoke into a phone, still watching the road. He did not know it, but that call would bring more help than he could imagine. For now, all he knew was the road, the hum of the engine, the memory of a promise, and the weight of a wooden box sitting steady between his shoulder blades. The sedan moved ahead. He kept his line. The light flickered once more, then glowed, as if the small bulb wanted to be brave with him. Up ahead, the road curved gently to the right, and the fields gave way to a stretch lined with trees. Their leaves made a dancing shadow across the asphalt. He rode into that pattern and felt a childlike joy at the way light and dark took turns. A distant sound reached him, a sound not of engines but of something else, like a soft note hanging in the air. He could not place it yet. He only knew that the day, which had started so quietly, was beginning to gather more voices around him. He adjusted his grip and checked the mirror one more time. The ribbon on his jacket lifted slightly, as if it too were watching. Somewhere behind him, a small, careful plan was forming in other people's minds. He rode on, steady and hopeful, ready to keep his promise, ready to arrive, ready for whatever kindness the road might bring. A soft chirp from a siren touched the morning air, not loud, just enough to ask for attention. Mr. Hamid checked his mirror and saw blue lights blinking in a careful rhythm. He eased off the throttle, looked for a safe patch by the shoulder, and guided his motorcycle over with a signal. The road widened near a row of shade trees, and he rolled to a stop on the gravel, steadying the bike with his left foot. The breeze moved through the leaves, making a warm whisper above the quiet engine. A white and blue patrol car pulled in behind him and parked at an angle to protect them from passing traffic. Two officers stepped out. They did not rush. Their movements were calm, like teachers walking into a classroom. The taller one, a man in his early 30s with kind eyes, lifted a hand in a polite greeting. The other, a woman with a neat braid and a focused face, stood slightly to the side, watching the road to keep the scene safe. "Good morning, sir," the man said as he came near. "I'm Officer Bilal. This is Officer Sana. Are you all right?" "Good morning," Mr. Hamid answered, taking off his helmet. His hair was thin and silver. His smile was gentle. "I am fine, thank you. I believe my tail light is not being a very good friend today. Officer Sana smiled at his choice of words. We just want to make sure you get where you're going safely, she said. May I check the light while you press the brake? Of course. He squeezed the brake lever. The small red lens glowed, then flickered, then gave up with a dull blink. There it is, said Officer Bilal, crouching to look closer. He touched the wire gently, then stood. The connection is loose. It might hold for a while, then fail again. On a bright day like this, cars may not see you slowing. I understand, said Hamid. I tried to fix it with my small tools this morning. Perhaps I did not tie the wire strong enough. It happens, said Officer Sana. Do you have a destination close by? We can help you figure out the safest plan. He nodded toward the road ahead. I am on my way to a memorial service, not far now. I go every year. I promised to be there and place something important. He touched his backpack with a light hand, as if to calm it. I also promised to be on time. Your name, sir? Asked Officer Bilal, taking out a small notepad. Hamid, he said. People call me Mr. Hamid. He shared his ID, and the officer read it, then returned it with a respectful nod. I'm going to put cones behind us, said Officer Sana, stepping back toward the cruiser. It will slow the passing cars a little. Please stay with your bike. The road began to flow around them more carefully once the cones were set. Drivers saw the scene and gave space. A bus rolled by, and faces at the windows turned to look, not out of worry but out of that simple human interest we all carry when we see a moment unfold. A young boy waved at Hamid from a back seat. Hamid lifted his hand and waved back, feeling a small lift in his chest. Do you mind if we ask what you're bringing to the service, said Officer Bilal, looking at the backpack with curiosity but also with care, as one would look at a fragile plant. It is only a wooden box with letters, a photograph, and a small badge, said Hamid. Nothing heavy. Only memory. He paused, then added, I made the box myself. My wife used to say that careful hands make strong hearts. I try to remember. May I see it? Asked the officer, asking not like a demand but like a request from a neighbor. Certainly. Hamid slipped the backpack off his shoulders and opened it. The scarf he had used to wrap the box looked like the sky at dawn, pale, with a thin blue line along the edge. He unfolded it and lifted the box. The wood was smooth and warm in the sun, the lid fitted so well that it made a tiny sigh when opened. Inside lay envelopes tied with a simple string, an old photo of young people standing shoulder to shoulder, and a small badge that had lost its shine but not its meaning. The faces in the picture were bright with that special kind of pride that does not need to be loud. Their shirts were plain. Their eyes were clear. My friends, said Hamid softly. We promised to keep meeting. Life changes, people move, but a promise is like a steady lamp. If you polish it a little every year, it keeps giving light. Officer Bilal looked at the photo and then at Hamid. How far is the hall from here? Not far by car, said Hamid. By motorcycle, at my slow pace, perhaps a little more than half an hour. The service begins in less than an hour. Officer Sana returned from the cruiser with a small kit and a roll of reflective tape. I can try a quick fix, she said, kneeling by the tail light. It may not be perfect, but it might hold well enough to get you there safely. Thank you, said Hamid, his eyes bright. I am not in a hurry, but I like to be on time. She smiled. Then we're in agreement. Safe and on time is our aim. While she worked, Officer Bilal spoke into his radio, checking traffic along the route ahead and asking dispatch for any road issues. The radio replied with a quiet voice that seemed to float from the car. Clear up to the roundabout, said the voice. Market traffic after that but moving. He thanked them and then pulled out his phone. Sir, he said to Hamid, is the memorial at the base town hall. Yes, said Hamid. They kindly allow us to use a simple room there. We read names. We share tea. We do not make a fuss. He smiled in a way that made his eyes soft. There is enough noise in the world. Respect can be quiet and still be strong. Do you know anyone at the hall? Asked the officer. Not closely, said Hamid. Many of the old faces have changed over the years. But kindness tends to remain, even when people change. The officer nodded. He thought for a moment, still holding his phone. I'm going to call the liaison at the base, he said. We sometimes coordinate when there are events. If they know you're coming and the light is not steady, they might help with a safer route or even meet you near the gate. He paused to make sure Hamid felt comfortable with that. Only if you agree. I am grateful for any help that is offered with goodwill, said Hamid. Though, if possible, I would like to arrive with my bike. It feels like keeping the promise with my own hands. We respect that, said Officer Sana, fitting the wire and testing the brake again. The light glowed, steady for a moment, then dimmed. She made a small thoughtful sound and cut a neat piece of reflective tape. This won't fix the wire, but it will make the rear more visible in daylight. She placed the tape carefully, smoothing it like one presses a crease from a shirt. Thank you, said Hamid again. You work with the care of a good tailor. She laughed softly. I learned to sew from my mother. It helps with everything. The small moment of laughter made the morning feel wider. A gentle warmth spread through the group, like tea in the hands on a cool day. Officer Bilal placed his call. He gave his name, his badge number, and a short, respectful summary. Elderly rider, on way to memorial at the base hall, tail light unreliable, wishes to arrive on his own bike, time is modest. He spoke the way he had spoken to his grandmother on the phone, slow, clear, and kind. While he waited for the other side to respond, he looked at the wooden box again. If you do not mind me asking, he said, how did you come to make the box yourself? I like to repair things, said Hamid. A chair wobbles, a hinge squeaks, a clock runs slow. When I fix something, I feel as if I am asking the world to remain steady for a little longer. I used to fix many small things when I volunteered at the community center near the base. Sometimes the work was mending wood. Sometimes it was giving someone a cup of water and listening. You volunteered at the center? Asked Officer Sana, curious but not surprised. Yes, for some years, said Hamid. When my wife was still with me, she would pack 2 extra sandwiches. We would share them with whoever came late and missed lunch. It was not a big thing. But she used to say, a small good thing is still good. She had a bright way of putting life in order without making a speech. She sounds wonderful, said Officer Sana. She was, he said, and for a moment his voice grew quiet, the way a room grows quiet when sunlight shifts across the floor. The radio on the patrol car buzzed again with a short update about a traffic delay 2 miles ahead. Officer Sana acknowledged it and asked a follow-up question. They learned that if they took a side road along the canal for part of the way, they could avoid the slow market stretch. The side road was narrow but safe if taken slowly. Good, said Bilal, covering his phone for a second. We have a safer route option. The person on the other end of his call spoke again. The voice sounded interested, then warm. Officer Bilal listened, nodded, and said, thank you. We'll be here. He ended the call and looked at Hamid, his expression soft. They would like to honor your arrival, he said. They are checking who can come meet you near the spot or closer to the town. They asked for your full name again, and when I said it, they were quiet for a moment in a respectful way. Hamid looked touched and a little surprised. I do not need honor, he said gently. I only need a safe road and a timely arrival. Sometimes honor comes as a thank you for the many quiet days you gave, said Officer Sana. You do not ask for it, but it arrives anyway. She tested the light again after adjusting the wire one more time. It brightened, then held, as if encouraged by the attention. This might last long enough if you ride slowly and keep your distance. We'll go behind you with our lights on low, just to make your path clear. When someone is keeping a promise, the rest of us can help protect the path. That is very kind, said Hamid, feeling the weight in his chest change from worry into gratitude. I sometimes think the world is full of small helpers who do not announce themselves. They are simply there when needed. True, said Bilal. He walked to the cruiser and returned with a small thermos and 3 paper cups. Tea, he asked. Hamid smiled. I would be honored. The tea was sweet and light, and it warmed his hands. He took a small sip and watched the traffic slow and then move again, like a tide. He felt calm. He felt seen. He felt ready. A minute passed, then another. A white sedan, the same one that had slowed beside him earlier, rolled by on the far lane. The passenger looked out and gave him a thumbs up. Hamid returned the gesture with a humble smile. The man in the passenger seat tapped his own chest twice and then pointed at Hamid, as if to say, I see you. The sedan moved on, and the gesture stayed with Hamid like a small light kept in a pocket. From somewhere in the distance, there came a sound that did not belong to cars alone. It was low at first, like a deep drum far away. The sound rose and fell together, not hurried, not harsh, just steady. Officer Bilal turned his head slightly, listening. Officer Sana looked down the road, shielding her eyes with her hand. Hamid felt the ribbon on his jacket lift again in the breeze, and he wondered what was forming on the path ahead. The radio in the cruiser murmured with a short message. A second later, the officers' phones buzzed with the same update, as if the day wanted to make sure everyone heard it. The message was brief and respectful. Help was on the way. Hamid closed the wooden box and tied the string gently. He placed it back into the backpack and pulled the scarf over it, smoothing the cloth as one might smooth the bed before guests arrive. He put on his helmet and tightened the strap. His hands moved with care. His breath was steady. His promise felt close now, like a friend just around a corner. Ready when you are, said Officer Sana, her voice soft but firm. I am ready, said Hamid. They stood together in that small space beside the road, the two officers, the elderly rider, the shade of the trees, the quiet cones protecting their back. The day had grown a little brighter. The world felt as if it was taking a kind deep breath. The steady sound in the distance grew clearer, like many feet walking in time, like many hearts choosing the same good rhythm. The sound grew clearer, not loud like a warning, but steady like a drum that keeps time for many feet. It rose from the road ahead, then seemed to come from the sides, then settled into a calm rhythm that made everyone straighten with quiet attention. A small dust cloud appeared in the distance where the highway bent. The leaves in the trees shook a little, as if they also wanted to see what was coming. The first to arrive were two motorcycles from the base security team. Their riders slowed early and used broad hand signals that told passing cars to give space. Behind them, a line of vehicles moved in smooth order, no rushing, no horn, just careful driving. A transport truck, a small bus, a van with tools, and a few jeeps rolled into place along the shoulder, each stopping at a respectful distance from Mr. Hamid and the two officers. Doors opened. Boots touched gravel. 50 soldiers stepped out and formed two neat rows without a single raised voice. The morning seemed to grow taller. At the front stood a captain with a clear face and a posture that was strong but not stiff. His cap sat level, his eyes were steady. He walked forward with measured steps, not too fast, as if he understood that dignity enjoys time. Officer Bilal and Officer Sana exchanged a quick look of relief and respect. They had hoped for help. This was more than help. This was a quiet answer to a quiet life. The captain stopped an arm's length from Mr. Hamid and brought his hand to his brow in a clean salute, then lowered it and offered his hand like a neighbor at a gate. "Mr. Abdul Hamid," he said. "Yes," said Hamid, his voice gentle and a little surprised. "I am he." "I am Captain Arif," the man said. "We came to meet you and to make sure you arrive safely. It is good to finally greet you in person." "Finally?" Hamid asked, tilting his head with a small smile. "I do not think we have met." "In a way, we have," said the captain. His voice held a warmth that did not need decoration. "People at the base know your name. Some of us know your kindness. Stories travel, sir. Good ones move slowly but far." Hamid's hands, which had been calm on the helmet strap, stilled for a moment. He glanced at the wooden box in his backpack, then back to the captain's face. "I am not sure I deserve stories," he said. "I only fixed chairs and poured tea when I could. Sometimes I helped with forms. Small things. Small things are often the bridge," the captain said. "May I speak openly?" When Hamid nodded, the captain continued. "Years ago, when I was new at the academy, my younger brother fainted near the community center on a hot afternoon. I was not there. A kind man, thin, silver hair, bright eyes, gave him water, sat him in the shade, and called our mother, who was panicking on the phone. He spoke calmly to her until she could breathe again. He stayed with my brother until I arrived. That man said his name was Hamid." The air seemed to hold still around them. Hamid's face softened with memory. He did not look proud, he looked thankful that a small act had found its way back with gentle feet. "Ah," he said. "Your brother was all right after? He only needed rest and a banana." He smiled, the way a person smiles when a picture from long ago looks new again. "He had kind manners." The captain's eyes shone. "He is well. He works at the base clinic now. He told this story again last night when we called for details about you. He said, 'The man who helped me is going to need help today. Please make sure he does not travel alone.'" Officer Sana felt a soft ache in her throat at those words. She looked at the soldiers. They stood without strain, like trees that had learned how to be strong and kind at the same time. Some had their hands behind their backs, some held them at their sides. All watched Hamid the way people watch a candle being carried through a room. The captain turned to the officers with a respectful nod. "Thank you for the cones and for keeping him safe," he said. "Would you be willing to lead us along the side road by the canal? We will keep a slow pace. Our traffic team has already paused the market turn for a few minutes. We can move him gently to the hall." "We'd be honored," said Officer Bilal. "His tail light is uncertain. We were planning to escort him anyway." "We brought a technician," said the captain, gesturing to the van. "If Mr. Hamid allows, we can check the wiring here. If not, we can ride with him as is. The main aim is steady safety." Hamid nodded. "I will be glad for careful hands," he said. "But I would like to ride my own bike, if that is still possible." "It is not only possible," said the captain. "It is the plan." He looked over his shoulder and made a small motion with two fingers. One of the soldiers stepped forward, a soft-spoken mechanic with nimble hands and a neat kit. He crouched by the tail light with a gentle hello to the machine, as if it were a shy animal. He did not talk much. He loosened a screw, tested a wire, trimmed a frayed end, and joined the clean copper again with a small connector. He wiped the lens as if polishing a mirror before guests arrive. "Please press the brake," he said, not looking up. Hamid did. The red light glowed, held, then glowed a little brighter. The soldiers in the first row smiled with their eyes but did not cheer. This was not a moment for noise. It was a moment for steady breath. The mechanic replaced the lens and added a thin strip of clear seal to keep dust out. He stood and wiped his hands with a cloth, then gave a small, satisfied nod. "It will hold," he said. Ride like you ride, calm and even. It will be fine. Thank you, Hamid said. You have given an old light a second chance. The mechanic touched the edge of his cap and stepped back to the line, where he disappeared into the simple shape of the group, the way a good stitch disappears into cloth while holding everything together. The captain looked at the wooden box. May I ask what you carry? Letters, Hamid said, lifting the box with both hands, the way one lifts a young plant. A photograph. A small badge. I bring them each year. I place them near the names. Then I sit for a while and listen to the silence. We have set aside a place for your box, said the captain. I called the hall. They said, please tell him we remember him. Hamid's eyes grew bright. He blinked once and smiled, not to hide emotion but to accept it with grace. You are very generous for such a simple man as me, he said. You are not simple in the small sense, the captain replied. You are simple in the strong sense. You keep one promise for many years. That is not small. Beyond them, people from a bus had stepped down and were standing quiet by the guardrail, watching. A fruit seller from a cart near the bend had stopped his work and shaded his eyes with his hand. A motorcyclist who had pulled over took off his helmet and held it at his side, as if a ceremony had begun and he had decided to be part of it by simply standing well. Officer Bilal checked the time. We can make it before the names begin, he said. If we move now. The captain nodded and turned to the formation. He did not shout. He lifted his hand and rolled his wrist in a small circle. The soldiers shifted with a hush, stepping to their vehicles with calm precision. 2 motorcycles would lead. The police cruiser would go ahead of them. A jeep would move behind Hamid, and the rest would follow at a gentle distance so that the road remained open for others. It looked less like a convoy and more like a quiet line of care. Before they moved, the captain stepped close once more. Sir, he said to Hamid, if at any moment you feel tired, lift your hand. We will stop at once. There is no prize for speed. The prize is arrival. I agree, said Hamid. Arrival is the point. He settled his helmet on his head and tightened the strap with fingers that had repaired many things and had learned to treat everything with respect, even a buckle. The captain turned to Officer Sana. You set this moment on a good path, he said. Thank you for your craft with the light and your steady presence. She nodded, a little shy at the praise. We are all on the same road, she said. Today it is his road more than ours. The captain smiled, then faced the 2 rows of soldiers who were now near their vehicles. One more thing, he said, lifting his voice only enough for them to hear without strain. We are not escorting a problem. We are accompanying a promise. Match his pace. A soft wave of understanding moved through the group. No one replied with words. They did not need to. Understanding is its own language. Hamid swung his leg over the motorcycle and settled onto the seat. The bike made its familiar small sound as it came to life. He glanced at the mirror. The red light held steady, as if it had listened to the advice about keeping promises, too. He looked ahead at the road that now felt wider than it had an hour ago. Before he rolled forward, he looked left to the group of watchers by the bus and lifted his hand. They lifted their hands back. One of the children there cupped his hands around his mouth and called, not loudly, but with the pure tone children have when they wish someone well, safe ride, uncle. The word uncle surprised Hamid. It felt right. He gave a small nod that meant thank you, nephew, I do not know. The police cruiser eased onto the road. The 2 base motorcycles took the lead with soft signals on. Hamid followed, his speed gentle, his line steady. The jeep moved behind him at a comfortable distance, like a friend walking a step behind to make sure a bag strap does not slip. The rest of the vehicles joined, leaving gaps for traffic. No one tried to make the group look grand. They tried to make it look kind. As they rolled, The captain walked the first few meters beside Hamid, his hand on the jeep's frame, matching the motorcycle's slow start. "Do you remember the center's old water cooler that leaked?" he asked with a half smile. Hamid laughed softly. "It was a stubborn one. I put a rubber ring in twice, and it still made a small puddle every afternoon. We learned to place a bowl under it. Some problems ask for patience instead of better tools. I learned that from that cooler," the captain said. "I was a cadet then and wanted every fix to be perfect." A woman from the neighborhood said, "Child, sometimes a bowl is a solution. I think of that often." "Her name was Parveen," said Hamid. "She made the best tea with cardamom. She would be pleased to hear you remember." The captain's eyes warmed. "You remember everything," he said. "I remember what is kind," Hamid replied, and the captain nodded as if someone had just placed a small, bright truth into his hand. They picked up their pace to a calm cruise. The canal glided beside them on the left, its water a soft green ribbon. Children on the path waved. A farmer paused with a bundle of grass on his shoulder and smiled. A woman with a bright scarf adjusted a basket and watched the line pass as if she were counting blessings. A dog sat and tilted its head. Even the sun seemed to lower its sharpness by a small degree, as if to be gentle. Inside the police cruiser, Officer Bilal kept his eyes moving, calling out turns in a mild voice that did not stir worry. Officer Sana checked her side mirror every few seconds to watch the old motorcycle hold its place like a note held in a song. She thought of her mother's sewing lessons and how a clean seam makes the cloth feel new. This road felt new today, not because it had changed, but because care had drawn a bright line down its middle. The captain, now in the jeep, looked at the small figure of Hamid ahead and felt the kind of peace that does not make a person sleepy but makes them steady. He thought of his brother at the clinic and of his mother in the kitchen, placing 2 cups on the table for a visitor who might arrive any minute. He thought of the water cooler's bowl and of the way some solutions are simple and strong. Hamid felt the wind touch his cheeks and the ribbon on his jacket lift and settle, like breathing. The red light behind him held firm. The wooden box was balanced between his shoulder blades, safe and still. He did not think about speeches or praise. He thought about names, and about the way a room full of people can become one listening body when a name is spoken with love. They approached the roundabout near the market. The path had been held for them, not closed with force, but opened with courtesy. Vendors stood with their carts pulled back a little. A man with a stack of bread on his head paused and smiled as they passed. A truck driver tapped the center of his steering wheel twice, not to rush them, but to send a soft greeting. It sounded like a heartbeat. When the hall's low roof finally came into view beyond a row of trees, Hamid felt a lightness in his chest, the kind one feels when a friend is visible at the end of a lane. He kept his speed gentle. He did not need to arrive fast. He needed to arrive whole. The captain lifted the radio. "Hall, this is escort," he said simply. "He is on his way." A voice came back, warm and sure. "We are ready." The hall came into view like a quiet promise at the end of the trees. Its low roof shone softly in the sun. The canal drifted away to the left, and the road straightened. People near the gate had already begun to make space. A gardener paused with his hose and watched the small procession approach. A few children stood on a short wall and waved. Mr. Hamid lifted his fingers from the handlebar in a small greeting. He felt calm, the kind of calm that comes when the road and the plan fit together. Then the light changed. A soft gray slid over the sun, and a thin rain began, not heavy, but steady enough to make the road shine. The first drops hit his visor with a light patter. The captain raised his hand from the jeep window and made a slow circle with 2 fingers. The lead motorcycle signaled to reduce speed. Tires hissed on the wet surface, and drivers nearby eased back out of respect. Hamid straightened his back a little and pressed his knees to the tank. He had ridden through rain many times, but he did not take pride in that. He took care. His engine gave a small cough. It was not much, just one uneven breath. He listened. The sound evened out, then stumbled again at the next rise. The jeep behind him moved a fraction closer, not to push him but to be ready if he needed a hand. The mechanic tapped the driver's shoulder and pointed at the exhaust with a question. The captain nodded once. They would watch, they would not crowd. The rain thickened for a minute, as if a grey curtain had been pulled halfway across the sky. The gate was now only 200 meters away, but 200 meters in the rain can feel longer than 2 miles on a clear day. A gust of wind lifted the ribbon on Hamid's jacket and pushed at his shoulder. He steadied the bike with a quiet breath and rolled off the throttle, letting the motorcycle glide. The tail light held firm, bright and sure. He felt a small, grateful smile under his helmet. The old light was doing its best. Another cough from the engine. This time the sound dipped low. He felt the bike lose a little push. He clicked the gear down softly to keep the engine from working too hard and gave the throttle a small, patient twist. The motor answered like an old friend asked to climb one more step, slower, but willing. The convoy matched his pace without any rush. No horn, no shout. Only the small steady signals of trained hands and thoughtful eyes. At 50 meters from the gate, the rain softened and then stopped, as if it had only wanted to test their patience. The air smelled new and clean. A guard at the gate stepped forward with a respectful nod, checked the scene, and pressed the button to open the barrier. He looked at Hamid, realized something on his own, and stood a little straighter. The captain spoke to him in a low voice. The guard listened and then put his hand to his heart in a simple sign of welcome. The convoy moved into the base road. The surface was smooth, and puddles glowed like shy mirrors. On the left, a small flag rested in the damp air. On the right, a row of young trees shook raindrops from their leaves. The police cruiser peeled off to park along the side, leaving room near the hall entrance. Officer Bilal stepped out and spoke with an event usher. Officer Sana walked near the motorcycle, keeping an eye on passing vehicles and on Hamid's face. She met his eyes and gave a small nod that said, "Almost there." He answered with a nod that said, "Thank you. I feel steady." They reached the hall steps. The captain signaled a gentle stop. The jeep's door opened, and he climbed out. Two soldiers stepped forward with a small umbrella and held it above Hamid while he eased the motorcycle to a calm halt. He put down his foot, cut the engine, and sat for one extra breath to let his hands accept the stillness. Then he lifted his leg over and stood. For a moment, no one moved. Not because they were unsure, but because stillness felt right. The hall doors stood open, and the cool air inside smelled faintly of flowers and clean floors. A short table with a white cloth waited near the front, beside a low stand for candles and a neat frame where names would soon be read. A staff member adjusted a microphone and tested it with a soft word. The microphone made a tired crackle, then fell silent. The staff member frowned kindly and tapped the cable. The captain stepped to Hamid's side. "Shall we go in?" he asked. "Yes," said Hamid. He reached for his backpack straps, but the mechanic had already offered the wooden box with two careful hands, asking permission with his eyes before lifting it. Hamid nodded and placed both palms under the box as it passed to him. The lid felt warm through the scarf. He carried it as if holding a living thing. They walked toward the hall together, the elderly rider, a captain, two officers, and a handful of soldiers who stayed back a step, making a respectful space around them. People inside turned quietly. No one clapped. A few pressed their lips together and lifted their chins in a gesture that meant, "We honor you." Some faces were new to Hamid, some he knew from other years. A woman with a gray braid placed her hand over her heart and then let it fall, her eyes damp in a way that had nothing to do with rain. At the table, the coordinator greeted them. He was a calm man with a notebook and a pen that never seemed to run out. "Welcome, Mr. Hamid," he said. "We are glad to see you." He reached to the side as if to signal the sound team to test again. The microphone offered another soft hiss, then nothing. He tried a second one. It gave a few words and then cut. He looked up with an apologetic smile. "The power to the audio line is not steady," he said. "The generator is busy keeping the lights on in the other wing. We can fetch a portable speaker, but it may take time." "It is all right," said Hamid. "Names can be read without a machine. Silence carries well." The coordinator's shoulders relaxed. He nodded with relief. "Yes," he said. "You are right." He looked at the box. "We have prepared a place for your letters, if you are ready." Hamid held the box a little closer. He had brought it here many times and always taken it home after the service, as if guarding a small flame through the night. The coordinator, seeing the tender way he held it, chose his words with care. "This year," he said softly, "the hall has begun keeping a small archive. Families who wish can leave their letters here, in a glass case by the front. The papers will be safe from damp and light. Visitors can read them and learn. There is no pressure. It is only an option." The captain looked at Hamid but did not speak. This was not for him to decide. Officers Sana and Bilal stood still as quiet posts, watching the scene with gentle faces. The soldiers waited without shifting. The room seemed to hold its breath in a kind way. Hamid looked down at the polished lid. He saw his own hands reflected faintly, thinner than they used to be, but steady. He thought of his wife's voice in their old kitchen. "Light is not for one shelf," she had once said, explaining why she liked windows open. He opened the box. The small sigh of the lid was the same as always, a loyal sound. He touched the edges of the letters with a finger that had fixed many hinges. The paper felt soft from years of careful reading. "I have kept these close," he said, his voice calm. "I have carried them like a lamp from my house to this table, from this table back to my house. Each year I worry about rain or dust. Each year I tell myself that care will be enough." He looked at the coordinator, then at the captain, then at no one in particular. "Perhaps now is the time for the lamp to be placed where others can see it without needing my hands." No one replied. They did not need to. The choice was clear. The coordinator brought a clean, empty space on the table forward and placed a gentle cloth on it. Hamid lifted the letters, one set at a time, and arranged them as if making a bed for dear guests. He laid the small badge near the front where it would catch the light. He set the photo close to the letters, faces shining out, young eyes looking steady at a future they had stepped into long ago. He paused with one letter in his hand. The handwriting belonged to a friend who used to laugh with his whole face. Hamid read a single line under his breath and then closed his eyes for the length of a slow breath. When he opened them, they were damp and kind. He laid the letter with the others and closed the box. The coordinator nodded to a staff member, who lifted the glass case and lowered it over the letters and photo with slow care. The small badge caught a beam of soft light and brightened. The case settled onto the cloth with barely a sound. The letters looked both safe and close, as if they could still speak. A small worry stirred near the side door. The young volunteer who usually read the names had not arrived yet. A traffic delay had held her at a crossing. The coordinator's pen tapped once, then stilled. He turned to the captain. "Would you read?" he began, then stopped. He looked at Hamid instead. "Would you like to start us?" he asked gently. "Only a few names, until she arrives." Hamid's hand flexed once on the box lid. He did not seek to stand before others. He preferred quiet work. But this was not public pride. This was service. He nodded. "I can begin," he said. The microphone remained quiet on the table. He did not touch it. He stepped one pace forward, not onto a stage but onto a simple patch of floor where everyone could see him if they wished and could look away if they needed to. The room hushed itself, as rooms do when they know something dear is about to happen. The captain stood at ease, hands behind his back, eyes soft. Officers Sana and Bilal stood near the door like gentle bookends to the moment. Hamid lifted a page from the coordinator's book. The paper shook a little in his hand, not from fear, but from the age that comes even to steady people. He held it with both hands, and the shake stilled. He spoke the first name. His voice was not loud, but it carried. It carried because he spoke as if saying the name to a person in the next room. He spoke the second name, then the third. After each, he paused for a heartbeat, the kind of pause that lets memory find a place to sit. Somewhere to his left, the generator flickered and then settled. The lights hummed more smoothly. A child in the back, held on a mother's hip, stopped fidgeting and listened. A young soldier lowered his eyes and stood very straight. The rain drip outside became a soft metronome, a gentle timekeeper for the space between names. On the fourth name, the portable speaker arrived and gave a small squeak as it was turned on. The coordinator reached to set it near Hamid, but Hamid shook his head with a kind smile. "Silence is working," he said softly. The coordinator left the speaker on a chair and stepped back. Midway through, the young volunteer arrived, cheeks pink from the quick walk, hair tucked behind her ears. She saw Hamid reading, took in the quiet, and did not rush forward. She waited until he finished the list on that page, then came to stand beside him like a student beside a teacher. He looked at her and gave the page with a small bow, as if handing a spoon in a kitchen. She read the next names, steadying her breath to match the room. When her voice trembled once on a syllable, Hamid reached out without taking the paper and placed his hand near the edge of the lectern, not touching, just near, like a lighthouse near a boat. She finished the line without a stumble. The captain's chin dipped, a small nod that meant everything is all right. A side door opened. The generator technician peeked in with two thumbs up toward the coordinator. The microphone might work now, but no one moved to use it. The room had found its own power. When the last name for the day was read, the volunteer set the page down with care. No applause followed. A simple quiet held the space, thick and kind. The captain stepped forward one pace and spoke in a voice just above a whisper. "Thank you," he said to the room. Then he turned to Hamid. "Sir, would you place the box?" Hamid moved to the glass case. He placed his palm on the lid for a moment, not pressing, not claiming, just greeting it, as if he were telling the letters, "You are home." His hand fell to his side. The captain took a small, plain certificate from his pocket, no seal, no ribbon, just neat words, and offered it to Hamid with both hands. "For steady service," it read, "given in small acts and many days." Hamid accepted it but did not hold it high. He smiled as one smiles when a friend has done something thoughtful, not grand. He turned to the officers. "Thank you for the cones," he said. "Thank you for the care on the road." They smiled in return. Officer Sana reached into her kit and took out a small reflector strip, new and bright. "For the ride home," she said. "So the light has a friend." He laughed softly. "A light and a friend, this is a good pair." Then came the hardest small choice of the day. The coordinator asked, with great care, "Would you like to take the empty wooden box with you, or shall we keep it with the letters?" Hamid looked at the box, now light as a bird without its nest inside. His hands knew its weight from many years. He could keep it. He could carry it home and place it on the shelf where it always sat. Or he could leave it, so that the letters and the box stayed together, as they had always been. He closed his eyes for the length of one breath. He saw his wife at the kitchen window, curtains open, dust motes turning in the light. He heard her voice say, "Let others share the light." He opened his eyes and placed the empty box on the table beside the case. It belongs near them, he said. So the story sits together. A simple feeling moved through the room like a soft wind. The captain saluted, small and clean. The soldiers did not stamp or shout. They stood as if two steady lines had been drawn through the heart of the day, one from the past to the present, and one from a quiet road to a quiet room. The test of the day had not been the rain, or the engine, or the microphone. The test had been whether kindness could stay simple when many eyes were watching. It had, and it felt like a good answer. The room held its gentle quiet for a moment longer, as if the air itself wanted to say thank you. Then the soft sounds of a hall after a service returned, chairs sliding a little, shoes on the floor, a low murmur of kind voices. The captain stepped back to give space, and people came one by one to greet Mr. Hamid. No one spoke loudly. They simply took his hand, or touched their heart, or said, "It is good you came." Each small gesture felt like a stitch, joining the morning to the meaning of the day. A staff member brought a tray with tea in light cups and a plate of simple biscuits. The steam rose in thin lines that smelled like home. "For strength," she said. Hamid smiled and took a cup with both hands. The heat rested against his palms and moved into his chest. He did not hurry to drink. He liked the feeling of being held by the warmth before the taste reached his tongue. He looked around at the faces, old friends and new ones. He saw a young man in a clinic shirt who looked shy but happy. The captain introduced him. It was his brother, the one who had once fainted near the center. The young man thanked Hamid with a few quiet words. Hamid answered, "You were kind before you stood up that day, and you are kind now." Near the door, Officer Sana knelt for a moment to adjust the new reflector strip on the rear of the bike, making sure it sat smooth. "Now the light will have a partner," she said again, half to herself, half to the machine. Officer Bilal spoke to the event coordinator about the side road and how the cones had helped that morning. They agreed to share notes for any future events, so elderly visitors could enter gently without pressure from traffic. It was a small plan, but useful, and plans like that were Hamid's favorite kind. People drifted out in small groups, still speaking softly. The rain had ended, and the air felt washed. Tree leaves near the steps were tipped with round drops that caught the sun like little mirrors. The captain and the mechanic walked with Hamid to the bike. The mechanic tapped the tail light one last time, more as a friendly goodbye than a test. It glowed steady and sure. "Good," he said. "Take the canal road again. It is calm." The captain offered to escort Hamid at a slow pace for the first stretch back, so he could settle into the ride. Hamid agreed, grateful for the company but still wanting to guide his own handlebars. He checked the mirror, lifted his hand in a small wave to the staff at the door, and started the engine. It answered like an old friend who had had a cup of tea, more settled than before. He eased forward. The captain's jeep rolled quietly behind him, and the police cruiser followed for a short distance until the base road widened. Then the officers pulled over, stepped out, and lifted their hands in farewell. Hamid stopped for a moment to return the gesture. "Thank you for the cones," he said again, and meant more than the words. They moved along the canal's soft green edge. The world had the special brightness that often follows rain. Birds were busy. The ground smelled kind. A child by the water waved an orange pinwheel as if sending color into the air. The tail light held firm. The reflector did its new work, sending a calm blink to any eyes behind. Hamid felt the box-shaped space in his backpack where the letters used to rest, and he did not feel empty. He felt as if he had placed a lamp on a windowsill and now, even while he rode away, the light still shone for others. At the next junction the captain gave a clean signal from the jeep window and eased off to take a different road back to the base. Hamid slowed and the captain came alongside for a breath of time so they could see each other clearly. "You set a good pace," the captain said. "You made it easy to follow." Hamid laughed softly. "When the road is shared, we all arrive better." They said goodbye with a nod that held more words than speech. The jeep turned. The motorcycle hummed on, quiet and sure. The town grew closer, roof by roof. Hamid passed the tea stand with the friend in the knitted cap. This time he stopped. The friend hurried out with a grin and 2 cups, as if he had been waiting for this moment all morning. I saw the convoy, the friend said, eyes bright. You led it like a small star. Hamid shook his head with a smile. I only kept my lane, he said. They stood under the shop's little awning and sipped tea while the friend listened to a simple version of the story. No grand words, only the steps of the day. The friend tapped the side of his cup. Next week, he said, bring those young riders who gather by the old tree. I'll give them tea if you give them lessons about lights and lanes. Hamid agreed at once. A plan formed in both their minds, a small safety talk, a simple check of wires, a gift of reflector strips if they could find enough. When he reached his lane, afternoon sunlight lay like a welcome mat across the narrow road. Neighbors looked up from doorways and sewing tables. A boy ran to open the small gate even though it did not need opening. Hamid switched off the engine and let the quiet settle. He sat for a second, feeling the stillness, then climbed down and patted the seat the way one pats a helpful shoulder. On the shelf inside his front room, the space where the wooden box once lived looked calm rather than bare. He placed the simple certificate standing upright, and set the tiny service ribbon beside it like a book's thin bookmark returning to its story. He put the new reflector's extra strip in a dish near his tools for later use. Small things should be stored where hands can find them easily. He washed his face and hands, changed into a fresh shirt, and stood for a long moment at the kitchen window. In the glass he saw not only his own face but a faint echo of his wife's smile, the way the memory of a song stays in a room after the radio is off. The letters are safe, he told her softly, and in that simple statement was a long line of years, each kept with care. Evening drifted in. A pair of students from 2 streets over came to the door, holding their helmets, shy but eager. Uncle, one said, using the same word the child near the bus had used, is it true the hall will keep the letters? Can we see them one day? Hamid invited them in. He poured water into 3 glasses, set out a few dates, and told them yes, the hall would keep the letters now, and yes, they could visit. He asked about their bikes and their routes and whether they rode at dusk. They nodded. He showed them how to check a tail light with a mirror, how to listen for a wire that speaks only when the road bumps, how to keep a small cloth and a tiny screwdriver in a pocket of the seat. A minute of care before a ride, he said, can save a long worry on the road. The next morning, he went to the community center and spoke with the manager about a fix-it afternoon. The manager clapped his hands together in delight. We will print a small note and put it on the gate, he said. Bring your bike, bring your light, bring your patience. The phrase made them both smile. Hamid asked the tea stand friend to help with cups. He called the number the captain had given him and asked whether the base mechanic could spare an hour. The answer came back quickly and kind, 2 mechanics would come, and someone from the clinic too, to talk for 5 minutes about calm breathing at a scene so that help can be given well. By the weekend, a neat row of young riders formed outside the center under the shade of the neem tree. Some were confident, some held their helmets as if they were still learning to trust the road. Hamid greeted each by name after hearing it once, and his memory seemed to lift the shyness from their faces. He taught them to make a simple checklist with their fingers: tires, brakes, chain, lights, mirror. Touch each, test each, he said. Then ride like every person you pass is someone you would pour tea for. They laughed at the line, and then they understood it. The base team arrived with a small box of connectors and tape. Officer Sana and Officer Bilal stopped by on their break, bringing a handful of extra reflectors from their kit and a story about a driver who slowed because a small red blink caught his eye just in time. Stories and tools mixed together in a way that made the afternoon feel useful and bright. Meanwhile, The hall placed a modest sign by the glass case, letters of steady days shared by families and friends. Visitors stopped and read. Some recognized names and grew quiet, not in sadness alone, but in a clean kind of pride. A local newspaper printed a short column with a small photo of the case. The writer did not try to make the story bigger than it was. She wrote about a man who kept arriving, a pair of officers who saw a need, and a captain who matched the pace of a promise. The tea stand clipped the column and taped it beside the kettle. People pointed at it with their cups and said, "Yes, that is the right size for a good story." Hamid's days returned to their usual rhythm: morning prayer, a slow walk to the bakery, a chat with the neighbor about his tomato plant that always bent toward the sun. Yet something in the lane felt new. Cars paused more kindly at the corner. Riders checked their mirrors with a small extra glance. Someone had strung a line of little flags over the alley, not for a party, but because color makes a place feel awake. Now and then, a stranger would stop him and say, "Thank you for the letters." He would answer, "They belong to all of us now." He liked saying that. It felt true in a way that did not need long words. One afternoon, he took the now empty wooden boxes twin a simple storage box he had kept for nails and screws and sanded it again on the balcony, smoothing every edge. He oiled the wood and set it in the sun. A neighbor asked, "Will you keep tools in it?" He smiled. "Yes," he said, "and notes." He had decided to start writing small hints for the young riders who visited: how to tie a loose strap, how to calm a shaking hand while fixing a wire, how to speak to a worried person so they feel safe. "Write it simple," his wife's voice seemed to say, and he did. On the next trip to the hall, he did not bring a box. He brought himself, his jacket with the ribbon, and a pocket full of short notes for anyone who wanted them. The glass case stood by the door, shining gently. He pressed his palm to the side for a second, the way he had done when they first placed the letters. The case felt cool. Inside, the small badge caught the light again. A young woman stood reading, her hand over her mouth, not to hide sadness, but to hold stillness in place. Hamid waited, then said hello. She looked up with thankful eyes and told him she had never met the people in the photo, but she felt as if she knew the way they cared. "That is the point," he said. As the months turned, the fix-it afternoons became a habit. Not every week, not with fanfare, but often enough that "bring your light" became something people said to each other in the lane, like "see you later." The captain visited once in plain clothes and drank tea under the neem tree, listening more than speaking. The clinic's young brother took a half-day off and showed riders how to breathe slow when feeling rushed. The officers stopped by when they could, sharing short road tips and long smiles. The tea stand kept a jar for reflector coins, and every time the jar filled, someone bought a handful more. When a traveler from another town stopped at the tea stand and asked, "What happened here that makes your road feel so calm?" the friend in the knitted cap said, "Nothing big. A chain of small things." He pointed down the lane, where Hamid sat on a low stool with a young rider, a mirror in his hands, a screwdriver resting beside him. "That uncle," the friend said, "likes to arrive. We learn to help him, and then we learn to help one another." At home, in the evening light, Hamid sometimes stood at the shelf where the certificate and ribbon sat. He did not stare at them. He simply checked that the dust was kept away and the paper sat straight. He would straighten the corner with a finger and think about the day when the soldiers formed two quiet rows on the roadside and the captain said, "We are accompanying a promise." He knew then, and he knew even more now, that promises rarely shout. They breathe. And when people hear them breathing, they make room. The lesson he carried felt simple enough to fit in a jacket pocket: show up, keep your lane, and let your light have a friend. If you do that, help finds you, sometimes in the shape of two officers, sometimes in the shape of 50 steady hearts, sometimes in the shape of a child waving an orange pinwheel at the edge of a clean canal. And if the rain comes, ride a little slower. You will still arrive.